Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cry Oneness, a show where you can share your miracles, share your hope, share your poetry, your music, whatever you want to share. It's 3 o'clock, and it's the hour of divine mercy. Let's take a moment to pause and pray for all the people in this country that are being devastated by this new virus that's going around. And I'm going to start today's show off with the Our Father. And my friend Forte is my guest. We'll both be praying, and then we'll start the interview. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So welcome, Al, to Cry Oneness.
Thank you.
And we're here in the backyard at my home, and it's a beautiful sunny day. And you wouldn't know there's anything terrible going on in the world right now, and there really isn't. It's just something we have to get through as a country and as a world together. My opinion is just God bringing us all together again, because we haven't been together lately. We've been a divided country. We've been a divided world, and unity is the opposite of division. And unity is the word they use for God in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what Al does as a ministry is after 9/11, he started doing Pray for Peace walks for his grandchildren. And Al's going to tell us why he started that, and he's going to share about his program, Pray for Peace. He's got a card he gives to everybody when he does these peace walks, and on the back of the card is a little prayer. And I hope you all can see it. We're doing this video also for you people just listening. Please apologize for this little interruption, but we're showing a card for a video we're going to be putting up on YouTube, which you'll be able to watch both on WCAT video and on Cry Oneness video. And go there after this show if you want to see a video of what we're doing over the conference call today. Okay, so Al, why don't you share a little bit about you, and then how you came to do this, for people who don't know you, your background, and then how you came to do this Pray for Peace walk that you do.
So first I'm going to read the prayer on the back of this card, which says, God, grant us peace in our world. Grant us peace in our own hearts. Help us to see you in others, and especially help us to see you in our enemies. So I'm going to start by putting up this sign. I don't know if it's going to come over here. And it says, N-O, no God. N-O, no peace. Then on the opposite side it says, K-N-O-W, no God. K-N-O-W, no peace. I saw that on a outside of a church that I passed on my walk from New York City to Chicago in 2008. I'm going to go back to the no God, no peace as it pertains to my life. No God. 30 years ago, my life was a mess. I felt like a total loser. I was losing my job, couldn't get a job, getting divorced, and losing my family. Oh, and I was drinking too much. And by the grace of God, I was led to Alcoholics Anonymous. And early on, at one of the early meetings, a woman shared that she prayed every day. And that woman looked and sounded better than I did. And that was the day I started to pray every day. And that was 30 years ago. And it set me on this path that I'm on now. And I will continue to be on for as long as I live. My faith started to grow at that point. I didn't even know it was growing, but it did. And eventually I started to go to Mass and Communion more frequently. And then 9/11 happened, and my children's mother worked at the World Trade Center that day. And it wasn't until it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon we found out she was alive, because all the telephone lines were jammed up. And I met her at the train station with my son, Matt. And when she got off the plane, she and Matt embraced and cried for a number of minutes. And I'll never forget that scene. And then time went on. I was continuing my spiritual journey, and and my son in Michigan asked me to come out to help him with the business he was starting. So I went out to Michigan, and I started to live with him and helped him with his business. And eventually, my life was boring. I had no social life. I knew I wasn't going to stay there forever, so I wasn't interested in building a social life. So I joined Toastmasters, and and I've been part of Toastmasters in Connecticut for a while. So there was a very nice group who worked for Whirlpool Corporation. They met at noon, and I was enjoying the camaraderie and sharing our stories and praying. And I was on a track where I had encouraged people to do something. And it was shortly after President Bush's talk in 2003, on top of the on the aircraft carrier that said mission accomplished. And what that meant was just that the aircraft carrier finished its mission. And I grew up during the Vietnam era, and I was in the Army during Vietnam, and all of us, or most of us, knew we were going to be in a mess. There's no way we should be here, and it's just going to be a mess. And it turned out to be a mess. Nobody ever thought it was going to be the mess it turned into. So, with the picture of my kid's mother, Matthew, and his mom praying after 9/11, and the mission accomplished scene, and knowing it's a mess, I was inspired to give this speech to encourage people to pray for peace. But my real goal was not to get people to pray for peace. My real goal to give that speech was to get the Best Speech Award. And as I was preparing that speech, a friend of mine sent me this picture of these soldiers in a prayer circle. And I decided to make a card out of that, which said, "They pray for peace, will you?" And that card was I was going to hand out as part of the speech, again, to get the Best Speech Award. So I gave the speech. The opening line was really great. I made a big booming sound, and I said, "I was jettisoned to the air, fell to the ground like a rag doll. And when I became conscious, 20 or 30 feet away from me was a young man and two little girls in a pool of blood. Oh, my God. It was my son, Chris, and my two granddaughters." And then I paused. And then I said, "That's not true. My son and granddaughters are alive and well in Michigan." But that's what's happening every day in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we look at it, see these scenes on TV like it's a movie. We look at it like it's a movie. It's not. It's somebody's mother, father, brother, sister dying, just like our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. So the speech continued, and I got the Best Speech Award, and I was done. But I had a number of these cards printed out that I didn't know what to do with. And I remember hearing my mom say, "Waste not, want not." So I decided to hand out these Pray for Peace cards. Since 2003, I've handed out about 80,000 of these cards. It was very difficult for me to hand out the cards because I was always thinking, if I give this card to somebody, what would they think of me? Are they going to think I'm a religious fanatic or a Hare Krishna type person? But I forced myself to hand out the cards, and as I did, it got easier and easier. And then I returned to Connecticut. And I continued to hand out the cards, not every day, just as the situation arose. I started to drive people to the airports in their cars. So I'd be at the airport, I'd have some cards in my pocket, and I would hand them out. I was in New York City one day, and I was handing out the cards on 2nd Avenue and 6th and 70th Street. And people in New York walk by you like you're part of the pavement. All right. And a construction worker walked by, and I said, "Can I give you one of these cards?" And he said, "I don't want a porn card." And I said, "Do I look like I'm giving out a porn card?" Yeah, it's New York City, by the way, and that happens. So he took a card, and he saw what it was, and we continued to laugh. We laughed about the situation. And then I got home, and I'm saying, people are going to think I'm giving out porn cards. I don't want them to think that. So that's when I had a hat like this made. So if I was giving out cards, I'd put this hat on. It took me 2 weeks after the hat came to wear the hat. So handing out cards, wearing the hat, having some Pray for Peace shirts made, wearing those shirts, and I continued for a while. Then in 2008, I was early for Mass at St. Bridget's Church here in Stanford, and I'm a just-on-time Catholic, so I very seldom get to Mass early. So this time I got to Mass 10, 15 minutes early because the schedule I was on, and I was just sitting in the church. And like I am now, the sun was going through the stained glass windows, and I was just sitting there thinking of nothing. I'd like to say I was meditating, but I was thinking of nothing. And an image of a Muslim mom and dad in a desolate area showed up in my mind. And they were praying over the bodies of their dead children. And then I heard this voice say, "Oh, Al, you can do something about this." And it wasn't a command. It was just the way I said it. "Oh, Al, you can do something about this." And every now and then, I would think about that you can do something about this. And I thought maybe I could do a walk, like a cancer walk or a heart walk, to promote the message of praying for peace. And then I said, it's only me. So I walked from Greenwich to Stanford. Who would even notice? So I decided I would do a long walk. And by the way, God gave me the gift at that point, and the gift was ignorance. All right? So I decided I was going to walk from New York City to Chicago and go to every Major League Baseball stadium on the way. Oh, I didn't really decide to do that. I just decided to put that into my computer to see what it would look like. And by the way, on the computer screen, 1,000 miles doesn't look as long as 1,000 miles when you're walking. Oh, and the computer doesn't tell you there are some things on the way called mountains, of which there were 6. I did not know about that. But this was all like a game I was playing. I wasn't seriously considering doing it until I said, how long would it take me? I would start at Yankee Stadium for a Yankee game and walk to Philly for a Philly game. The Phillies were at home. Pittsburgh was at home. Cleveland was at home. Detroit was at home. And the Chicago teams were at home. And that seemed to give me, is God trying to tell me something? So I decided I would do the walk. I didn't tell anybody I was going to do it because I wanted the option not to do it. And I would work out. And I lived in Norwalk at the time. I'd walk from my house in Norwalk to St. Aloysius Church, go to Mass and Communion, and walk back to my home. And that was 6.2 miles, and I would do that 4 to 5 times a week, getting in shape, because I knew I had to be in shape physically and spiritually to do this walk. Meanwhile, knowing I could always not do the walk. So I did that for a month or two. And then I was going to leave on Saturday. I forgot the exact date. It was in June. I was going to leave on Saturday. And that day, and the Friday before, I was walking to St. Aloysius Church, and I was to go to Mass and Communion. And on that walk, I thought of all the problems that could happen to me on the way. Suppose my cell phone break. Suppose I fell. Suppose a cab driver who had my stuff in it stole my equipment, like my computer and my laptop, which I needed to get in contact to determine what route I was going to take, because at that time there were no cell phones with the maps on it. And so I was completely in the worry mode. And you know how that worry mode goes? It's like a phonograph with a scratch on it, getting louder and louder. And I went to Mass. I had no idea what the priest was saying because I was still worrying. And I went to communion and came back from my pew and knelt down, and this is what I heard. Oh, wow, this walk is not about you. Oh, now the money you're worrying about, it's not your money, it's mine. You can deal with it with whatever you want. Oh, now, by the way, your life, that's not yours either. You can do with it with whatever you want. And a calmness came over me, not that the problems went away, but a calmness came over to me. And on the way back to my home, I called my best friend, Joe Ross, who lives in Queens with his wife. And at that time, they had one car. And I called Joe up, and I said, Joe, I'm going on this walk. If you come up today, this is Friday, I'll pick you up at the train station, and you can have my car for 2 or 3 months while I'm on the walk. So Joe came up, picked him up at the train station. We went to Polici's here in Stanford for dinner. And we didn't talk much about the walk. There was nothing to talk about. I didn't go on it. So there's no stories, no incident. There was nothing to talk about other than I was doing it. On the way back to my house, Joe said, you know, Al, I think it'd be a great idea if I go with you as the driver. I think, you know what he said? You know, it would be a great idea if I go with you as the driver. It would be good for me and my marriage. Oh, you're going to be paying for the motel rooms, aren't you? I said, yes. And the next day, Joe drove me to New York City. I went to the Yankee game. He drove home with my car because he couldn't. And then 3 days later, he met me in New Brunswick. If Joe didn't meet me in New Brunswick, the walk would have lasted a week. You really need a support group or a support team to do long walks like this. The incident I had, so he met me in New Brunswick. We had lunch, and he wanted to know what was the route. So I had printed out this route on my computer, and he said, Al, it looks a little confusing. So why don't we test drive the route? And we did. And we test drove the route, and we got lost. If I was walking, it would take me more than a day to find out I was lost, and I would never know really how to get back on track. So we did that walk, and that's how this walk to Chicago began and was completed. It took 79 days and was 1,000 miles. And we went to baseball games along the way. And we had to skip some because my estimates were a little off. I told you about ignorance. So that's how that's how the walks began, to spread the message of praying for peace. And since then, I've organized and done walks that have covered more than 4,000 miles. Hundreds have participated, and many have prayed. And I'm continuing to do this now for as long as I can. Thanks for this opportunity, Joe.
Okay. That's some story of how you got started. Similar to my story, you fell down for a while, you got back up again, and God gave you some work to do. And He used the World Trade Center for a lot of people to get them started off on a good journey, I think.
Yeah.
And He gave you a very special mission. I have a little question, though. How much money has this cost you to date, this God money that you're using?
So
or your own money that's not,
was
your money, it's God's money.
As I say to people, I have a non-profit organization, and it's a non-profit. So I just started to figure it out the other day. I don't know why. And up to the point of doing the 2008 walk and the completion of that, it was up to $30,000. Just the cards alone, the 80,000 cards cost like $12,000. Shirts, and I bought loads of T-shirts, thousands. So they cost a lot. Then the cost of the walks were a lot. I have to stay at a motel, eat, use the car. More than that, I was trying to figure out how many hours I spent on this mission, since handing out, since doing the talk that first time. And it's tens of thousands of hours I've spent doing this.
How many years is it now?
Well, 2003, I gave the talk, which started the mission. I didn't know it was going to start the mission. I thought it was to get the Best Speech Award. So I started in 2003, and it's 2020. Now, 2008 started the walks. I did a long walk almost every year. We've had 12 Fairfield County Pray for Peace walks.
12 years, 12 walks.
Well, not 12 Fairfield County Pray for Peace walks. I had a heart condition, something like this, that I couldn't do, so I had to skip some years.
Let's stick with the financial costs for a little bit. What do you think it cost you?
In total?
Yeah.
I'm going to say close to $50,000.
Wow. And you're retired?
I am. And I live on Social Security. So I'm not a man of means.
Okay. Just like me, I've put like $5,000, $6,000 into my cause, Cry Oneness, and, I haven't really suffered that much from it, but then again, I had to go through bankruptcy, so, God doesn't care what we have to go through to get to where He needs us to be. That's what I've learned the hard way.
So I'm going to switch this a little. I'm going to switch this to tell you I'm a father of, first of all, I'm 77. Second of all, I have 3 kids and 9 grandchildren. I would like the world to be a little better place for my grandchildren when they grow up. We see the devastation in the news, etc. And if we all prayed for peace, we'd have peace. Peace first in our hearts and in our families, peace in our cities, peace in our country, and peace in the world. Do you know how much money we would have if we had peace? Trillions and trillions of dollars, at least $2 trillion a year. I figured that out one day. We're talking about all the money we spend on peacekeeping stuff, Army, intelligence, FBI, all the police forces, and all these other agencies, plus all the prisons we have that might be a lot emptier if we all prayed for peace. And that money could be used for more important things than our defense, I think. But it will only happen. It could only happen if we had peace and more peace. So I'm not against the military or the build-up or anything like that, but I'm for peace. Mother Teresa, when the Vietnam War was going on, somebody asked Mother Teresa, would she march against the war in Vietnam? And Mother Teresa said no, but I will march for peace. I think we spend a lot of time on the negative parts of our personality, of the situation, rather than the positive parts. So marching for peace, walking for peace, praying for peace, being peaceful are the positive sides of violence.
I know you're a real humble guy, but Isn't it true that you had a cardiac arrest while on this journey? Tell people about that, so they'll have an idea of how hard you're working for the Lord. Because maybe we'll put up a GoFundMe site to try to get you some money, and it's very important people know you as a person before you start parting with cash.
So thanks for giving me for breaking this. First of all, I'm being much too serious. God has a sense of humor, and the sense of humor has not been shown up here. So here's the way God works. So in 2008, I finished the walk to Chicago. And when I finished it, I was done. I said, God, I did the walk. 50 newspaper articles got published, printed on it. None in the New York Times, of course, but in the local newspapers along the way. And I said, I'm done. So I came home. And the next year, 2009, I said, oh. So in December of that year, I had a cardiac situation. I think they call it ventricular tachycardia. I remember there was no pain. I was home. I just felt a little different. That's it. I went to the sink to get a glass of water, had one glass of water, second glass of water, said maybe I should check my pulse. And the pulse was going so fast there was no reason to check it. I remember calling 911. They were terrific. I said, my pulse is at this. They said somebody would be there shortly. Sure enough, the fireman showed up first at the front door, then the EMS guy, who was terrific. He was operating really quickly, but not fumbling, so he really knew what he was doing. He got me in the ambulance, stuck two things on my chest, had no idea what it was, and I got defibrillated. If you don't, you've seen that on TV where somebody gets defibrillated with two paddles on him and he jumps up. Well, that's what I had. And what I said, I'm not going to repeat for the TV, for the program, but it was something like the first word was you, the first word was blank, and the second word was you. But as soon as I said that, I was better, and I apologized for the guy in the EMS group.
So you were conscious while this happened?
Yes.
So that's called cardioversion.
Okay, I don't know what they were told.
They shock you to bring your heart back to normal rate.
And that's what he did. And after I said the expletive, he said, if we don't get that expletive, we know we didn't do the job right.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to the hospital, and eventually I got a pacemaker defibrillator. They found the minor blockage and that. So I was done. It's good.
God had more work for you to do.
He did. So, after you get all fixed up again, you almost feel normal.
Mm.
So
how old are you at that point in time?
66.
66, yeah.
So the thought came to me is maybe I could do another walk. Right. And then
maybe after my cardioversion, I'll do another walk.
Yes, but I didn't look at it like that.
Yeah.
All right? I didn't look at that.
Well, most people would lay down and die after that, so that's amazing.
Oh, well, they fixed me up. God's got great doctors. In fact, I remember the doctor. I call him electrician. I think they call him electrocardiologist.
Yeah.
And he was fixed me with stuff up, and he came into the room to give me the results. And I said, Doc, you're younger than both my children. You have a diploma, don't you? And he laughed. And then he said, how they have that serious look, and the guy's like 40-something. And he said, Al, with the heart condition you have, there's a slight chance you could die of a sudden heart attack. And I said to him, and you think that's bad news. That's my goal. Not right now, but if I'm going to go, that's the way I want to go. So that was done. And then one day, just like the, you start to play on your computer with things. Like it's a game.
Yeah. So
I was playing on that thing. I said, maybe I'll do another walk. I'll walk from, I'm not going to walk that far. I'll go from Boston to New York. And I'll wind up at a Boston Yankee game in New York City. So I got on the web, first I got on the computer and saw the Yankees were home on some date. So I said, that's the day I'm going to finish the walk. And then I estimated how long it would take me to walk from Boston to New York. And I got on the Red Sox webpage, and sure enough, they were home. And they had this little button called Contact Us button. So I pressed on that Contact Us button saying, last year I walked from New York City to Chicago to spread the message of praying for peace. This year I'm going to walk from Boston to New York to do the same thing. Maybe the Red Sox can do something. Press. That whole process, from the time that thought came into my mind to the time I pressed that button, might have been an hour or 2 hours. And the next day, I forgot about it. Because it was just something that I thought about. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Boston Red Sox. And I was amazed. I'm glad they couldn't see my face because I would look like an idiot. I was thinking, you really read those things? And you really read mine? And you're calling me up to find out about it? And they said, what would you like us to do? And I said, what did you have in mind? And they said, well, we'll get you on the game, get you on the game for batting practice and to the game, put something up on the big board about you praying for peace. And I said, thanks. Great. It was the Mariners game. So meanwhile, my friend Joe Ross, who did the walk last year.
So wait, what happened at the game, though?
Well, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
So I called Joe up. He says, I'm in. Then I got back on the website, and I saw the Red Sox were playing the Yankees the weekend before. So I called them back up, and I said, I'm very happy with what you're going to do, but I did notice that you were playing the Yankees the weekend before. I'm going to end at Yankee Stadium for a Boston Yankee game. Would it be possible to switch it to the Yankee-Boston game? And the woman said, whoa, that's a big game. I don't know if we can do that. And sure enough, they did.
Who did?
The Red Sox. The Red Sox switched it to the Boston Yankee game. We're on the field for batting practice at Fenway Park.
Yeah, that's great. Right?
For a Boston Yankee game. Called my friend Joe up. He said, wow, that's great. So he's in. So now, meanwhile, I had 200. I found a guy in Boston who does T-shirts, and had 200 Pray for Peace shirts made in the navy blue, Boston colors, and Boston lettering, red letters with white around them, and those spurs. They look great. I was going to bring them to the game, and I did. Meanwhile, I had to check with the doctor to make sure this was okay, hoping that he would say no. And this is what he said. Al, walking's really good for your heart. I said, thanks. So we went up to Boston. Let's say there was a lot of commotion. I forgot my medicine. I had to get pills sent to a drugstore up there. So the whole day before, there was a lot of commotion before I could actually begin the walk. So I started at the Old North Church in Boston and walked to Fenway Park. And on the way to the park, I had some lightheadedness a couple of times, maybe 4 or 5 times, a very hot day. And it was so lightheaded that I had to stop and lean against something to get my composure. And then I continued, got to the game, on the field for a Boston Yankee game, great, handing out T-shirts. And I said to my friend Joe, Joe, I'm going to sit in the stands for it. It's a little hot out here, and I've been feeling a little strange. Well, it turned out I had another heart situation. So that walk didn't end. Meanwhile, I had a camera crew there, guys that do this as a hobby to film the situation, etc. But I wound up at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, which
before the game,
before the game started.
Whoa.
Before the game started. So I'm in the hospital. Great emergency room, great doctors. And my friend Tom Casey, who's an avid Red Sox fan, that was up there the Friday before to go to the game with his daughter. And he called me up and said, how's the game going? I said, I'm in the hospital. I have a heart situation. And he said, Al, do you still have the tickets? That's what I call a good friend. Yeah.
He wanted your ticket.
Oh, yeah, right. But I know he's joking. So meanwhile, the doctor came in, and he had one of these attitudes. He's checking out my stuff. He was wearing a badge. I said, why are you wearing a badge? I'm the sergeant. Somebody's got to be in charge. I said, wait, how long am I going to be? He said, I'll tell you. You don't leave before I tell you.
Must have been a MASH doctor.
Oh, he was a Jewish doctor from New York that had one of those Brooklyn attitudes, right? And he was kind of like matter of fact, boom, boom, boom. So I know people from Brooklyn because I grew up there. They have great attitudes, but they might not know what they're really doing. So I called my doctor up because I had my cell phone with me and said, told her about the situation. I'm in the hospital at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. And I said, and this doctor is treating me. I think his name was Jacobson. Right? And I said, do you know anything about him? And she said, oh, yeah. He wrote the textbook on the condition you have. I interned with him.
Wow.
That's how God works.
I got you the right person, then.
Yeah, and they fixed me up, and I went home. But
what happened with the game and everything?
Oh, I didn't go.
Did they put it on the screen anyway?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I wasn't there.
And the Yankees and the Red Sox are playing.
And the Yankees and the Red Sox, I handed out T-shirts.
You had tickets.
And I had tickets and T-shirts.
And T-shirts.
And I gave out maybe 30 of them at the game. And then...
You would have given out 200 of this. And what was God's plan there, do you think?
Go home.
Go home and rest down?
I did it the following year, though.
Oh, so you did make the Red Sox.
I did.
And the Yankees?
2000 game. And the Red Sox got me on the field, and the Yankees got me on the field.
That's great. What was the reaction from the fans?
There was hardly any reaction.
Yeah.
It's just, loads of people there doing stuff and promoting stuff at that time.
But that's a major accomplishment.
But I'll tell you, one day, though, we had like 6 of us did a walk from the Old North Church to Fenway Park.
Let's stay in the big stadium for a little while. Okay, both the games that you did do. So you it's amazing that anybody with a spiritual cause gets on either the Yankees or the Red Sox big screen. That's a major accomplishment.
Yeah.
Most of the time when you start talking about God, people turn the other way.
Well, so we got to have some issues here, all right? First of all, at both those games, both of them, they play God Bless America.
That's great.
Both of those games. Both of those teams do. And as far as there might be some other places, but ever since 9/11, I know the Yankees started to play, and I think Boston started to play it. Second is, Pew Research said 55% of us pray every day. 20 to 25% pray on occasion. And a friend of mine who was a sergeant in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War and in Vietnam, he said when mortars are flying over your head, everybody prays. All right?
Oh, yeah.
So the problem is we don't show it. We go to church, all right? We pray there, and we walk out, and we look like everybody else. Most of us walk out, we're nice guys, we're pleasant, we hold doors for people, but nobody knows that we pray. And if everybody knew that, I think it would make a big difference. I'll give you an example. If half the people at Yankee Stadium were wearing Pray for Peace shirts, the message that would deliver not only to the other 50% of the people in the stands, but to the TV audience watching it. They'd have to see those shirts. And yet we keep it to ourselves like it's a secret.
Amen.
And we're reticent. We are extremely reticent about talking about God or prayer in public. And
most people are a lot more embarrassed to pray or tell people about miracles, which is my cause. Share your miracles. Don't keep them inside.
Right.
When God does something, like you're talking about what God did in you, I don't think you're the only one God's working wonders in, but people are embarrassed to share about it. And I had reason to be. I told the priest about some of my stuff, and he told me there's such a thing as demonic possession. We have to get over this fear of sharing what God's doing for us in this country. We have to share our miracles with our friends. We have to let our friends and relatives and everybody else know how God's working in our life. We have to pray for peace, yes, But then we have to share the story like you just shared so that we all get more faith. We all go to church. We all listen to the gospel. The gospel's 2,000 years old, and it's great. But there's miracles happening today that people aren't reporting, and people should start reporting, just like you did today, what's going on in their life with God, and not just what's going on with baseball, what's going on with the movies, not what's going on, the horrible stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of really good stuff going on in the world right now.
Look, the news, I don't want to use that word, the news media is terrible.
Amen.
It's absolutely terrible. If we all stopped watching it, I think it would make a big change to our country. I can remember talking to my son about a walk I was doing. I was a little depressed, and he said, Dad, I always notice about you and Mom that you look at the glass half empty. And he shook me up. I hate it when my kids press my buttons. And they are saying the right thing. You know, I should have joy in my heart when I'm doing something like this. I don't know if that joy has showed up on this video, but if you're doing God's work, you should be joyful about it. I should have thought about that before I started. But anyhow, I said to myself, I thought about traffic.
Yeah, wait a second. Let's work on that right
Sure.
there. Share about three of them, because we only have about 15 minutes left. Share about 3 positive events that have happened because of these walks, miracles that have happened during your walk for peace, things that really lifted your heart. Let's talk about a couple of those things that really made you happy when you were doing this.
So first was last year, the walk from Boston to New York. It was New York to Boston. God was with us on this walk. There were well over a dozen TV segments done on the walk and dozens of newspaper articles. I didn't even know how many were done. Friends of mine in Stanford were calling me up when I was outside of Providence. Say, we just saw you on ABC News. Or we just saw you on Channel 11. I was on Channel 12 a number of times, and they were rebroadcasted in the Brook outside of the Fairfield County area. A newspaper article was written. There was a newspaper article written in the Post, and somebody called me up and said, you were on the 3rd page, and I hate to say that but that we saw you on the 3rd page of the New York Post. It was like 3 inches by 2 inch article about this guy walking from New York to Boston. So that was one. So I felt like the message was getting out.
How did you feel internally? How did it make you feel when you got all these pieces of information about how effective it was getting?
It felt like you did something good, and God was just showing you that something's happening.
Do you have an inner feeling of extreme joy, or are you just happy other people are benefiting from your work?
I was just happy the message was getting out. All right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we get one person to say one extra prayer, that's a miracle. Because when we pray, we get closer to God. So that's a miracle.
How many people do you think have prayed as a result of you giving them cards? How many cards have you given out?
80,000.
80,000.
And based upon my experience on handing out the cards, about 50% of them have read the prayer on the back of the cards because I've seen them turn it over and walk away saying that prayer. Maybe it's 30%, 30 to 50%. But one of the most moving incidents that happened to me was when I was in Van Wert, Ohio. And newspapers all was written up about these walks as I did them in these newspapers. But most of the time we had to go back to pick up the newspaper because I was outside that town or area when the article was published. This time, for some reason, the newspaper had a bigger circulation. So I went to dinner at a restaurant with my friend Joe, and I was recognized when I walked in, and oh wow, lots of things are coming up.
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff.
It reminds me of somebody.
At another restaurant, a woman shared, my dad's in Iraq. He'll really appreciate this. At Fenway Park, a woman said to one of my friends, "Do you belong to an organization?" He said, "We're just trying to spread the message of praying for peace." She said, "One of my sons just came home from Iraq, and another one's there. Thank you for what you're doing." And I didn't think about listening to things like that, but there were incidents like that. There were sometimes people, one woman saw me walking. She said, "Are you the guy I saw on TV?" I said, "Yeah." And we started talking. And it was just a conversation. She said, I'm under a lot of stress. I'm putting my mom in a nursing home because I can't take care of her anymore. And I said, my dad had dementia. I said, I can relate to what you're doing. I said, you have no other choice. You have to do this. My mom got a heart attack, keeping my dad at home. And I said, we could pray that you have peace in your heart as you go through this, trying situation in your life. And that's happened on a number of occasions. To think you do something that resulted in somebody's peace.
I would say that those 80,000 people who accepted the card accepted peace.
Well, if they just read what's on the first,
maybe they didn't pray themselves,
no.
But they gave an act of lowering their resistance to the point where they accepted something from a person they didn't even know. And that's what we have to do in this country.
Yeah.
We have to start accepting everybody and every other country and every other faith so that we become one again instead of this divided world we've become.
So first of all, I'm going to think about that statement you're on, about we're divided. The news media has us divided. We're not divided. Look, walk around the streets. Everybody's peace. Most people are peaceful, helping each other. Think about, so it's going this other thing. Think about traffic, all right? Here's the good news about traffic. There are people, men and women, willing to give up 2 to 4 hours a day of their day in traffic to go to work to support their families. All right? To support their families. That's a tremendous thing that people are doing. And we don't see that at all in the news. Let's look at the traffic, all right? As a negative thing. Just like Mother Teresa said, we spend too much time thinking about the negative. And it gets us down. The more we see this negative stuff on the movies, the more down we get, and we don't see the goodness of the people in our society.
I see the goodness every day, and so do you.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful I don't have to rely on the media to give me good news.
Yeah.
I'm with people who share miracles every day. I'm with people who share their hardships every day, and I'm with people I love every day. And they're not my real family, but they are. And that's an amazing thing, and we're not going to go into that because we're focusing on your journey. But I will say, you keep talking about Mother Teresa. She was spiritually dry from the time she left the convent. She didn't feel God's presence. She didn't feel any joy. She just kept working hard to heal, taking care of the sick people around her without looking for anything in return. And based on even the way you're reacting today, you don't really seem to feel any great pleasure for what you're doing, but you keep doing it anyway, and that's what she did. And when God gives us something to do, it's not always easy. Matter of fact, it's usually the opposite. I've written this poem, the closer you get, the harder it gets. The closer you are to God, the harder it is to work for Him. This is a roller coaster ride we're on. People like me want a sailboat cruise. And there is a lot of good stuff going on in this world.
Tremendous amount.
And it's too bad it's not put on the media.
I'll tell you two groups I know about. Number one, it's the Franciscans of the Renewal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I know one priest has is working at a halfway house for 35 to 40 men. Each have their own room, right, in the Bronx. And there are Franciscans like that throughout the country doing this. All right. And there's no news coverage on them. All right. The news media sucks.
Not going to happen. They're not going to do anything other than scaring people into spend their money. That's what they get paid to do. Their sponsors are the money behind them. They want people on edge all the time, so they spend money.
So I'm going to get off that topic because that's negative.
Okay, well, negative's okay once in a while. When something's upsetting you, the only way to change it sometimes is to talk about it.
Yeah.
I talked about it last week. But let's stay positive, and let's go to what's your goal now for your journey with Pray for Peace? What's your next venture?
Well, my plan was, this year's plan was to do another walk from Boston to New York. And I was going to go to a Boston Red Sox game at Fenway Park on June 12th and finish at Yankee Stadium on July 25th, both Boston Red Sox games. And this whole coronavirus came up, and I don't know if that's going to happen. And the good news is all this planning and working on this big walk, I've come to believe, is not as fruitful as it could be. So now I'm changing my plan to do shorter, more frequent walks to get this message out. And maybe a couple of weeks, all right? And if people want to join, that's fine. But I'm doing what I do. You know, we'll talk about that after the show's over.
Yes. So if anybody that listens to these posts we put on blogs and on YouTube and on social media, if anybody wants to help your cause, maybe they can call and get some cards or call and help you financially. How would they get in touch with you? Talk about your website.
Okay, there's the website, 2020walks.org, 2020walks.org, and that'll have a link to another website that is much more history of the walks. Be great if people said they want some cards. And I'd love to hear experience of other people handing out the Pray for Peace cards.
Right. Well, you've had some amazing experiences. People might like to do it, you know. Just give out the card.
And just giving out that card is doing God's work. Sometimes we make it really big, like you got to be a missionary to a place like in Africa. We need missionaries here in the United States more than we need in Africa. And we can all be somewhat of a missionary.
We all are, just by what we do with our lives.
Yep.
Yeah. Our whole lives are really just prayers and actions, if we make them that way.
Boy, the sound of the birds is a gift from God.
That's beautiful. I was down Cove Island yesterday, and you wouldn't know there's any problem in this nation with an infestation.
No. It's
terrible, you know. This whole thing is separating people even more than they have to be, I think. There's this bell curve. This is why they're doing it. I was in healthcare. A bell curve, the flu peaks and disappears in a hurry, like 8 weeks, like it's starting to do in China. Our government decided, because of the healthcare facilities, the hospitals and everything, to slow the spread of the disease so that the hospital staff could get ready for the crisis that was coming. So if 10% of all the people who get this require hospitalization, there wasn't enough facilities to take care of it. So the government's trying to slow down the spread, but they're not eliminating the spread because they have no vaccines. So they're having us act like we're in a cell someplace and can't go anywhere.
So this is above my pay grade.
Mine too.
This is way above my pay grade.
It's really bothering me.
All I know is I looked up this figure, and I think the number's like 450,000 Americans die every year because of smoking. The people are going to die, I don't know. But I'll guarantee you there's not going to be close to that amount of people are going to die because of this coronavirus.
You know, just the regular flu.
Yeah.
450,000 people last year were in the hospital and 10% died. Right. So the death rate on this is way lower than what we had.
And we don't know what it's going to be, but
no. So the future is God's business in my mind.
Yes.
And we're trying to make it our business. That's why I'm mad at the government right now.
Well, I'm not mad at the government because I try not to think about the government.
Yeah.
Because we are the, you know, somebody said that they talk about the Catholic Church, and when they were talking about it, they were talking about Rome, diocese, buildings. That's not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church are the people, not the buildings, not the organization. It's the people that are the Catholic Church. And if we all did a little, or just a little more, not much, just a little more, what that would mean. I'm sorry I got on a bandwagon.
Well, the good thing about this, I'm sure a lot more people are praying now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's like the World Trade Center. It started your program. It started a lot of other good things. Some good is going to come out of what we're going through right now.
You know, after the World Trade Center, we saw people praying.
Yeah.
We saw funerals with thousands and thousands of people. I've been down to 9/11. There were people, thousands and thousands of people posting stuff on the wall of a church, on the gates, the fence around the church, right? So it looks like after a tragedy, we see people pray.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands are praying. And I've come to believe that's like us putting on the seatbelt after the accident.
I agree.
Maybe if we prayed before the accident wouldn't have happened. You know, my dad, I thought about my dad, and my dad said, maybe if you prayed with the intensity I prayed, with half of the intensity I prayed, all those bad things that happened to your life wouldn't have occurred.
Prayer. My father, I've told this one before with you, I think. I was organizing the Babe Ruth World Series, and my father had a cardiac arrest in front of me, and they defibrillated him like you were cardioverted. He was defibrillated. He was unconscious, though, and wailing like he was in hell already. And our family got together. We were told he was brain damaged, that he wouldn't come back the same. We had a meeting where we were getting ready to pull the plug on the ventilator at the recommendations of the whole family. And Dr. Schuster popped his head in the door and said, give me 24 hours. And we did, thank God. And I went to a Babe Ruth World Series committee meeting at the government center that night, and there was 300 people there that I had to brief for the World Series. And after everybody finished briefing their committees, I stood up and I told them what happened to my father, and a lot of people knew him. And the next day we went up, and he was writing notes asking how his grandson was, and we were all ready to pull the plug. And, you know, if God wanted the plug pulled, it would have gotten pulled. But God wanted my father around, and 3 months later, he got a hole-in-one in Vero Beach, Florida.
See, those are the stories we need.
Exactly.
Those are the stories we need.
Sharing miracles.
And there are 350 million people in the United States. At least 10% of us have stories like that. At least, if not more.
Poor people who don't like to share them because they're embarrassed. Please, don't be embarrassed anymore. When God does something for you, he's doing it for you, hoping that you'll tell other people how good he is.
Yeah, and don't think about it as bragging, all right? Because if nobody knows the results of what you're doing, nobody knows to do anything. You know, there's one thing when you like something is when you do something good for somebody, you don't tell anybody about it. That's fine, which is the way we should be. However, when you do something good and the results can do something to change a situation in our society, it's good to publicize that and get that message out.
Think of it this way. You know, I talk about the Shroud of Turin and everything. You know, the original 12 apostles used to go all over desert celebrating the Eucharist on the Shroud of Turin, the burial cloth of Christ. And picture if they didn't share that Jesus reappeared to them and anointed them all, where would we be right now?
Right.
So their word became the New Testament, and we're all New Testaments waiting to be heard when we have miracles given to us by God. We're so good at sharing bad news and so bad at sharing good news when something happens.
Yes.
Most people.
Yeah. Oh, no. That's the word. It's common.
So we have about 3 minutes left. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we close? Because I have a final prayer from Richard Rohr I want to read when we're done.
Yes. For those of us that are parents and grandparents, think about our children and think about our grandchildren and what type of legacy we can leave them. And we're not talking about money. We're talking about a legacy. And we can all pray for peace. So everybody prayed one extra prayer for peace. The second thing is, when you're praying for peace, say, God, if you have something for me to do, can you show me what I can do to spread that message? And help me not to be reticent about it. And I'm saying that prayer for me because I very infrequently pray in front of my children or grandchildren. And I'm reticent about it. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Okay, it's been a great pleasure listening to your journey. I've never heard it completely like that before. And anybody who wants to hear more about Al, please go to his website, Walk for Peace 2020, correct?
2020walks.org.
Okay. This prayer from Richard Rohr, I love them, all-inclusive Franciscan. He tries to write prayers that include every single denomination, and here's one. Oh, great love, thank you for living and loving in us and through us. May all that we do flow from our deep connection with you and all beings. Help us become a community that vulnerably shares each other's burdens and weight of glory. Listen to our heart's longings for the healing of our world, in particular this influenza. Knowing you are hearing us better than we are speaking, we offer these prayers in all the holy names of God. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to Cry Oneness. We hope this video turns out good for you, and thank you, Al, for being with me today.
Okay, thanks so much, Joe. So he has blessed us both.
He sure has.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.